Okay, for yin today, we'll start seated. And I'll give you a couple of options. So you could just sit on the mat if that's comfortable for you. If you want to prop yourself up on a block, a blanket, a bolster to lift the hips up, especially if there's any tightness in the hip flexors, or if the knees are coming up really high, then you'll want to get the hips higher so the knees go down a little bit lower. And if you're not sure, prop yourself up if you have something. And we're going to get into the feet. We'll start with the feet today. So let's bring the left foot on top of the right knee. You just need access to it. So you can either do a cross-legged seat. You could do one leg out in front of you and bring this leg on top. But just bring the foot up a little bit higher so you can reach it however you're comfortable. And if you have rings, just be careful. You might need to take them off, but you're going to weave the fingers between each toe, and you're trying to get the webbing of the fingers and the webbing of the toes to touch. And that doesn't always happen for all of us. That's just what we're aiming for. So you do the best you can. And then once you have that, grab onto the top of the foot and start to move the foot forward and back. So you're moving from the elbow forward and back. And if you're cold, this is a great way to warm up your feet. And if your feet are ever bothering you, this is a nice thing to do when you're cooling down at night, sitting down. Okay, see if you can get the fingers all the way down to the base of the toes. And then once you get them as far as you can go, spread the fingers as wide as you possibly can, essentially spreading the toes as wide as you can. And just stay there. Maybe keep working on spreading the fingers. And bring the hand back to the foot. So you're grabbing the top of the foot, still keeping the fingers between the toes. And we're coming back to this one, moving the elbow forward and back. Moving the foot forward and back, the top of the foot. And then one more time, bring the base of the fingers to the base of the toes. Maybe you can get them down a little bit further. Spread the fingers as wide as you can. Still breathing in and out through the nose, up and down the back of the throat, especially with something like this, if the feet are sensitive. Then relax the fingers, start to take the fingers out from the toes, extend the legs out in front of you, and just look at the difference between the feet. They might be a different color. There'll probably be more space between the toes. Kind of fun to check out. And then you'll switch sides. So whatever's working on the first side, maybe try that on the second side, bringing the foot up a little bit closer, taking the fingers, weaving them between each toe as best you can. If there are a couple of toes where you can't get the fingers in, that's fine. You can skip those or just get to the top of the toe. And then once you get the fingers all the way down, start to move the top of the foot forward and back. Elbow moving. And then stop, try to get the fingers down a little bit lower. See if you can spread the fingers wide. And you might be as low as you can possibly go. Sometimes I get a little bit more room. So that's why I say try to go down a little bit lower. Keep spreading the fingers to spread the toes. And grab back onto the top of the foot. Move the foot forward and back. So the palm of my hand's on the ball of the foot and my fingers are on the top of the foot. And one more time, we'll spread the fingers, bring the hands as far down, or the fingers as far down as you can. Spread the fingers as wide as you can. Still breathing in and out through the nose. Trying to send the breath to the foot. And start to let that go. Take the fingers out from between the feet. or the toes, extend the legs out in front of you, and maybe the feet look even. And you'll walk the feet in, especially if you're seated on top of something, just lift that up, lift the hips up, set it off to the side. You'll come to hands and knees. If you need padding underneath the knees, grab it or double up your mat. You're tucking the toes underneath you, knees and feet all the way together. And then maybe you start to walk the hands back, coming into your version of a toe tuck. So that could mean the hands stay down on the mat and you feel like this is enough weight for your feet. You just want to make sure the fourth and fifth toe are still pointing forward. Some of you can bring the hands to the thighs and sit all the way up. So you're putting the maximum amount of weight on the feet. So find a place where you can sustain the pose without too much effort. If your chest is upright, I'll give you something to do with the shoulders just to keep you distracted. If you have the hands down, stay there. Don't worry about this part. Reach the arms forward, palms facing up. Bring the right arm on top of the left arm. And you can either grab the shoulder blades, backs of the forearms together, or left fingertips inside of the heel of the right hand. And if that's all going well, shoulders can move away from the ears. Maybe the forearms start to lift, coming into a version of eagle arms. Reach the arms forward, palms facing up, left arm on top of right, maybe hands to shoulders, maybe backs of the forearms together, or maybe fingers of the right hand inside the heel of the left. Reach the arms up, 5 breaths. Release the arms down by the sides. Hands come forward to the mat. All of us untuck the toes, sit back onto the heels if the knees are okay with it. And this should feel really nice to put some weight on the tops of the feet after that toe tuck. Maybe you're good here and this is enough to chew on. You could come into an ankle stretch, which could feel really nice. That means bringing the hands down to the mat and then keeping the tops of the feet on the mat, lifting the knees up. And that's where you get into the top of the foot, ankles. We won't be here for long. Try to smooth out the breath. Set the knees back down to the mat, come back to kneeling, hands on the thighs, keep the chest upright. Only if your knees are okay with this. If you need to take breaks, take breaks. We'll come back into that ankle stretch if you want it. Hands will come down to the mat. Tops of the feet still pressing down into the mat. Lift the knees up toward the chest. And slowly bring the knees back down. Bring the feet over to one side and extend the legs out in front of you. We'll come into a forward fold. This will be our first longer hold. You could take a strap and loop it around the soles of the feet and do it this way. This is nice if you're having any lower back stuff happening, then you don't have to fold forward. Sometimes a longer forward fold can bother our lower back. So this could be a good way to stretch out the legs. You could start to hinge forward, but you don't want to have too much force. You could use a bolster on top of, or blankets on top of the legs, which can be really nice because you take the bolster, you bring it all the way up against the abdomen. Blocks can be great too because they can be nice armrests or a headrest. So play with it a little bit if you do have props, come into it. If you don't, then just legs are out in front of you and you start to fold forward. Rounding of the spine's fine. Let the hands rest on something, which could be the legs, the mat, something soft, or maybe you even turn the palms to face up, and that keeps you from reaching forward, which is more effort than we want for a pose like this. Starting to settle in. The legs were bent for so long with weight on them. This should feel nice to just keep that the legs out in front of you. You'll start to bring yourself back up. No need to rush. Take your time. Coming back up to seated. If you have props that you're using, just setting them off to the side. And for this next one, you'll lean over to the right, bring the left leg back behind you. So the top of the foot is on the mat. And you might find when you do this, you're definitely not sitting on that left foot. It's off to the side. And it's just one leg at a time. You might find the left hip is elevated from the mat. So you could fill in that gap with a block, with a blanket. You could just sit on a block evenly between the two hips if you're having a hard time staying even. So from here, sitting up tall, you could stay right here for the posture. Another option, if you're feeling okay with this and your left knee's okay, you could recline. So walking the hands back, keeping the chest reclined, spine long, close the eyes. Maybe this is good. Some of you like to come down onto the forearms or maybe even all the way down onto the back. I have to slowly work my way into it. So I'll stay here, and over time, I might come down onto the forearms, but I guarantee you I won't come down onto my back. That's too much for my body. If that works for you, go for it. I'm ready to take it deeper. I'm coming back onto my forearms. Stay where you are if you're comfortable there. If you've gone too far, come up a step. If you're all the way down onto your back, make your way back up onto your forearms. If you're on your forearms, come back up onto the hands, still leaning back. And if you're reclined back, start to work your way back up to seated. You'll lean over to the right, extend that left leg forward, bring the feet wide on the mat, and move the knees side to side, windshield wipers. It's a good stretch for the knee too, if it doesn't bother the knee. So you might be feeling that there, even the whole front of the shin, top of the foot, ankle are really getting into that area today. So extend the legs out in front of you. We'll come into another hip opening on the same side. So sole the left foot on the mat, left foot on the mat, step that left foot over the right leg, grab onto the outer left ankle bone and move it out to the side. So maybe you're good here with that bottom leg extended and you can do half a shoelace pose. If you want full, you would bend the bottom leg, making sure that the hips are even on the mat. Feet can come in closer to the body. They can move farther away. One's more intense than the other. I'll let you figure that out on your own so you can find the right place to be. And then from here, you can stay upright or you could start to fold forward. That definitely brings more intensity into the pose because you're putting more weight on the hips with the legs in the hip opening. So see what feels good in your body. Close the eyes. We'll start to make our way back up to seated. Hands come back behind you, so you recline back. Right leg extends out in front of you. Left leg extends out in front of you. Windshield wipers, feet wide, knees side to side. We'll come back to seated with the legs extended out, and we'll start to switch sides. So you'll lean over to the left, bend the right leg, top of the foot, outside of the hip, so you're not sitting on it. And this side could be different. Knees are close together. You might need to prop yourself up, the hips up on a block, bolster, or blanket for this side. We'll start to come into the shape. So maybe you stay upright and this is good enough. If you want more, you can start to walk the hands back and recline back. And you might be very different side to side. So make sure you listen to your body. This side could be tighter or more open. If you're coming all the way back, feel free to do that if that's an easy place for you to be. You're all the way down on your back. You'll start to come back up onto your forearms. If you're back on your forearms, come up to the hands slowly. And if you're reclined back onto the hands, start to bring the chest up, lean over to the left, slowly extend that right leg forward, come back to seated, feet wide, knees side to side, windshield wipers. Definitely after a long hold like that in that shape. And you'll start to extend the legs out in front of you. Coming back to seated, sole the right foot to the mat first, then step the right foot over the left leg. Up to you how far out you bring this right foot over to the left. Stay like this. You're already in half shoelace, or if you want more, lean over to the left, bend that bottom leg, and feet aren't underneath the hips. So both hips are even on the ground underneath you. Feet can come in, they can go out wide. You can just stay seated upright. You don't have to fold forward. If it seems like a good idea to fold forward, start to walk the hands forward, bringing yourself forward. Close the eyes wherever you are. staying with your Ujjayi breath. Let's start to bring the head back up if you're folded forward, coming back to seated, walking the hands back behind you, extending the bottom leg first if it's bent, then the top leg, back to windshield wipers, feet wide, knees side to side. For this next one, you'll want to have a strap. You could also use a towel if you have that instead. And then two ways, you can keep the strap just long, or you could make a big loop with the strap. And I'll show you if it's not possible to make a loop with the strap, you can still do this without anything. And you can also do this without a strap completely. So you'll make the biggest loop you can with your strap. If the strap's around this size, you can always go smaller, just you want a little bit of a tail. And then come on down onto your back, soles of the feet to the mat, head down. Loop the sole of the right foot into the strap and extend the right leg up. If you don't have a strap, just extend the right leg up, grab onto the back of the right thigh, and you're in the same opening. If you have the sole of the foot in the strap and you have a strap in a loop, and make sure you know where the buckle is. You want the buckle to be away from the body, but within reach. So it shouldn't be touching the foot or the head. And then from here, you could lift the head, bring the head into the strap, and then you let the head come down toward the mat and the foot pull away from you. And it's a different opening. It's kind of more relaxing for some of us if you don't, and it covers the ears. So that might feel better than having it between the ears and the head. So if this feels like a shape you can stay in, go for it. If it's too much, take the head out and keep the head down on the mat. Close the eyes. It's up to you if you keep the sole of the left foot on the mat or if you start to extend it forward, resting the heel down. We've been doing a lot of bent leg poses in our practice today, so this will feel nice to get the blood flowing in a different direction with the leg extended up overhead and just keeping the leg long. And if you have the head in this strap, you get a nice neck opening at the same time. And if you have the head in the strap, grab both ends of the strap, widen it so you can lift the head, take it back out, set the head down on the mat, and we'll switch feet. So either looping the sole of the left foot into the strap or just switching legs, grabbing onto the back of the left thigh if you're not using a strap. If you are using a strap and it's in that loop, the size of the loop might be okay for this other side. You might need to make it bigger or smaller, but you'll lift the head up, bring the head into the strap, and maybe you extend that right leg forward. Head is trying to go down toward the mat at the same time the left foot is pushing away from you. And you just get enough tension in both areas so that, and you keep those two areas pulling away from another so that you get enough tension in the strap where you can just let the head be heavy and get the backside of that leg to start opening up. And if the head's in the strap, you'll bring the hands to the strap, start to take the head out of the strap, setting the head back down onto the mat. And you can set the strap off to the side, hug both knees in toward the chest, rocking side to side. Soles of the feet will come back down onto the mat. You'll need a block or two for this next pose. We're coming into supported bridge. So you'll want something underneath the hips. It could be a bolster too if you don't have a block, but if you do have a block, use one of those. And if you're using something else, that's fine. Press into the feet, lift the hips up. Bring the block to the medium height or the lowest height. Don't go as high as you can possibly go. So skip the third height for now. This is our first back bend. So we just want to, well, it's our first and only back bend. You don't want to go too deep too soon. I'll give you an option to go deeper in a little bit if you want to. You can close the eyes, soles of the feet on the mat. You've been here about a minute. If you want to go higher with your supported bridge, you can. So you could take that block to the tallest height, or if you have two blocks, you can stack those one on top of the other, lowest height. You might need to adjust where the blocks end up so that they're right underneath the hips, away from the lower back. Chest lifts. Getting the shoulder blades underneath you is a lot easier when the block goes up higher. Don't worry about it so much if the block is lower. And as you're getting relaxed in the pose, try not to let the knees splay out. Keep those pointing straight forward. If you're still looking for a deeper back bend, you could walk the feet forward, heels on the mat. Sometimes that feels nice on the top of the hips, pelvis. Chest is still lifted, tail pointing toward the heels. If you have the legs extended out in front of you, start to bring the soles of the feet back to the mat, back to supported bridge. And if you're up higher than the lowest level on the block, start to work your way down. So press into the feet, lift the hips up, adjust the block so that now you're on the lowest setting of the block. Then press into the feet, lift the hips, set the other block off to the side or whatever you have underneath you so the hips come down to the mat. Resting here. Then bring the knees and the feet together, feet still on the mat. You'll cross the right leg high up over the left leg. So crossing high up on the inner thighs. And then from here with the right leg over the left leg, press into that left foot to scoot the hips over to the right. Both knees will come over to the left, coming into a spinal twist. If that brings any tension to the lower back, uncross the legs or put something between the knees. That'll also bring more space. And you can let the gaze fall over to the right if it's not too deep. But we've played with the legs crossed, so it might be a nice day for a cross-legged recline twist, but sometimes it's not, so don't force yourself to be here. If you have the legs crossed, uncross them. If you have something between the knees, remove it. Bring the soles of the feet to the mat, finding center on your back again. Bring the knees in toward the chest, hang on to each knee with each hand, and then start to move the knees around in circles. So you're feeling the hips move around on the mat underneath you. Circles are slow, going in the same direction. And now switch the direction, go the other way. Soles of the feet, come back down to the mat. At this time, left leg crosses high up over the right leg. You'll press into that right foot on the mat, scoot the hips over to the left, and then both knees start to come over to the right. Listen to the body, especially the lower back. Make sure it's okay. If it's not, uncross the legs. You can just stack the knees or put something between the knees. Left arm reaches back behind you. You don't have to go all the way into the twist, just go part of the way. Your body will go deeper as it's ready. And we're not even trying to get to our edge. So see where you can soften things up. And you'll start to uncross the legs if they're crossed. Remove anything from between the knees if you have something there. Come back onto the soles of the feet on the mat, center on your back. Knees will come in toward the chest. Grab onto the knees and start to move the knees around in a circle. It's a nice counter, especially for a deeper twist. Deeper meaning longer hold, so that intensity builds over time. Switch the direction, go the other way with your circles. And this practice teaches us these transitions between deeper poses, how important it is to counter and take our time to unwind. So feet come back down to the mat. You'll roll over to your right side to bring yourself back up to seated so we can set up for Shavasana. You could take a traditional Shavasana. I'll give you a recommendation if you have 2 blocks and a bolster, something like a bolster. You'll take the blocks on the tallest height, bring them out in front of you, and you want them about this far apart. So I'd say maybe shoulder width distance apart if you're looking at it. Just not too wide. So definitely not as wide as your mat. Bolster, blanket, whatever you have goes on top of those blocks. So it looks like this at the top of my mat, little bridge. So once you have that, you want to sit as close as you can to the side. So bring the body close to the bolster without touching it. And then you'll bring the legs up onto the bolster. And here's where you'll see if it's secure or not. Hips might need to go closer to the whole thing so that when you lie down onto your back, your legs, the knees, the thighs are more vertical, right? So backs of the thighs and backs of the knees are supported with the bolster, arms down by the sides, close the eyes, let the legs relax, palms face up. Unless you want the hands on the body, that works too. Whichever one sounds more relaxing. And you can feel how having the legs elevated like this brings some space to the lower back of the hips. Wiggle the fingers and the toes. Bring the feet up onto the bolster. Bring the knees in toward the chest. Roll over to one side. Be careful of that. The props. Lying on your side for a moment, eyes closed. Using the hands, bring yourself up to seated. You'll probably need to scoot out of the way of the props. Once you come to seated, sitting up tall, checking in with yourself, noticing what's changed within you, being grateful for your physical yoga practice. Hands come together in front of you. Bow the head. Take a moment, honor and acknowledge your heart and your spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bringing the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thanks so much. Hope that felt great in your body. A lot of lower body stuff today, feet, ankles, knees, hips. So see how that changes how you feel. All right. See you next time. Thank you.